There exists a kind of intelligence that is rarely acknowledged. You won't see it on a school curriculum, nor will you find it celebrated in lectures or in neatly bound books. It isn't the type that earns trophies or applause. It is quieter than brilliance, more elusive than charm, and far more unsettling than raw intellect. This is the kind of mind that doesn't operate in light. It thrives in shadows. It doesn't scream for attention, but everyone senses it when it enters the room. A presence felt more than seen. A force understood only through unease. You've encountered it before. The man who never raises his tone, yet the atmosphere bends around him. The woman who seems delicate, yet manages unseen levers that alter the direction of everything. They don't chatter, they don't broadcast their plans, but when they speak, their words hit like precision strikes, clean, devastating, undeniable. This is not the kind of intelligence the world praises. This is something sharper, something darker. Call it shadow intellect, call it dark intelligence, and once you grasp it, you will not look at life the same way again. Because this kind of thinking doesn't argue, it doesn't plead, it doesn't compete. It dismantles, quietly, surgically, without trace. Machiavelli didn't admire brilliance for its sparkle. He respected it for its lethality. He knew the most dangerous minds weren't the loudest. They were the ones orchestrating outcomes while appearing uninvolved. If you've always felt different, not softer but harder, not slower but more precise, this message is for you. Because once you cultivate this kind of intelligence, you step outside the boundaries of ordinary existence. The reason you'll never hear this spoken in schools, in polite conversations, or in traditional teachings is simple. The moment people understand how this works, they fear you. The moment you master it, you no longer move within the systems. Others control you, quietly take control of them. And it doesn't begin with memorizing lessons or acquiring theories. It begins with noticing, with paying attention when others are distracted. At first, it looks like silence. You're not quick to speak. You absorb, you observe. You listen long enough to notice the fractures in someone's confidence, the slip in their story, the hunger in their laugh. You nod at jokes you don't find amusing, not because you're fooled, but because you're mapping the dynamics. Who craves validation? Who postures? Who hides? With every passing interaction, you become less naive. The world looks less like chaos and more like a system running on patterns. A code of human weakness that reveals itself to anyone who watches long enough without needing to interfere. You begin to notice the absurdity in people. They defend meaningless positions simply to protect fragile egos. They argue loudest when most insecure. They brag when they're frightened. They call themselves strong while quietly falling apart. And all the while, you're learning. You see it clearly now. People are predictable, especially when they feel unthreatened. That's the opening. That's the terrain where shadow intelligence moves unnoticed. You learn to ask questions not for answers, but to strip away masks. You let silence do the heavy lifting, watching people confess without realizing it. You allow their emotions to speak louder than their words. They believe you harmless, but you are storing information, piece by piece, until the picture is complete. Dark intelligence doesn't thrive on chaos. It thrives on calm. It uses the blind comfort of others as cover, and eventually your perspective shifts. You no longer see people at face value. You see structures, leverage, weakness, loyalty, betrayal. You spot deceit before it's spoken, fragility before it's flaunted, disloyalty before it manifests. You're 5 seconds quicker in every exchange, 5 moves ahead in every scenario. Because your mind isn't governed by reaction anymore, it's governed by calculation. That's the transformation. Not becoming smarter, but becoming immune to naivety. Realizing the world isn't run by truth, but by perception. That trust isn't sacred. it's leverage. And once you learn to steer perception, you steer people. Words stop being casual. They become instruments. A sentence can destabilize more effectively than a scream. A carefully timed pause can undo someone more than an argument. You stop explaining yourself. You stop defending against pettiness. You don't fight to prove value. You let people discover their miscalculation when it costs them. You're no longer a participant in their game. You're redesigning the game itself. The metamorphosis is subtle. You no longer broadcast your ambitions. You don't announce injuries. You don't let your emotions become visible vulnerabilities. Pain becomes more data. Betrayal becomes instruction. Disappointment becomes redirection. You're not cruel, you're deliberate. Machiavelli respected this state above all. The moment someone stops forcing themselves into a broken system and begins shaping reality to their advantage. And by the time others notice, it's already too late. They still see the quiet one, the polite one, the harmless one. They never realize they've been entangled in your design from the beginning. That's the paradox. By the time they sense what you've become, you've already won. This is dark intelligence. It doesn't arrive like lightning. It's forged in long hours of silence, of watching, of processing. It is not intellect that shines. It is intellect that hides until it no longer needs to. At that point, you don't need influence. You are influence, and nothing can rival that. When this transformation settles in, your behavior begins to terrify others in ways they cannot articulate. They can't explain why you unsettle them, why they tread carefully around you, but they feel it. It's the quiet force of someone no longer dependent on approval, someone who no longer plays roles, but writes them. That's the moment you stop being simply intelligent and start becoming dangerous. There are 5 core attributes that form the skeleton of this kind of intelligence, each one subtle, each one weaponized. The first is emotional detachment. The calm you carry unnerves people. While others rage, you calculate. Insults don't rattle you. Pressure doesn't shatter you. Not because you don't feel, but because you've trained emotion into information. Anger becomes insight. Fear becomes foresight. Sadness becomes clarity. You don't suppress, you transmute. Others are enslaved by feelings. You harvest them for data. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's the sound of a blade sharpening. The second is forensic observation. You don't simply look, you dissect. You watch posture, eye movements, the hesitation between words. You notice not what people say, but what they avoid saying. You sense tension before it breaks. You don't need confessions, you already hold them. And this makes people unsettled around you, because deep down they feel exposed. They know you see the fractures in their armor. They may not know how, but they know you know. The third is controlled presence. Your very arrival carries weight. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to dominate space. Your silence generates more gravity than most people's noise. Because you don't project predictability, you project mystery. Mystery creates unease. Unreadability creates caution. When people can't categorize you, they give you more room than you demand. Your value isn't in being everywhere, it's in being rare, and rarity always creates power. The fourth is strategic speech. You don't talk to fill voids, you talk to steer outcomes. Every word chosen, every pause weaponized. You don't argue, you guide. You don't insist, you seed thoughts that others claim as their own. You master the art of planting ideas invisibly, leaving people convinced they reached conclusions independently. Your speech becomes subtle architecture, silent influence that bends rooms without raising a hand. The fifth is absolute self-reliance. This is where most collapse, and where you ascend. You sever dependence. You no longer crave applause, reassurance, or understanding. Your value is internal. The person who no longer needs validation cannot be manipulated by its absence, and that makes you untouchable. When guilt, shame, and social pressure no longer bind you, you are free to move invisibly, strategically, beyond control. You become presence without need, power without demand. These 5 traits do not make you less human. They make you incomprehensible to ordinary minds. You no longer live in the same economy of fear and need. You've stepped into an entirely different terrain, the terrain of influence. That is shadow intelligence. That is danger, disguised as calm. But possession of power is only the beginning. Knowledge unused is weakness in disguise. Intelligence without application is wasted potential. So, what do you do with this? How does one apply shadow intellect daily without ever being detected? First, you learn to steer conversations without domination. Let others talk. People expose themselves when they feel heard. You don't seek to impress, you extract. Ask questions that seem casual but are surgical. Why do you believe that? What did that moment feel like? What came after? Their answers give you leverage. Then, when the time is right, you drop just enough input to tilt their thinking, never revealing yours. You're not in the discussion, you're steering it from beneath the surface. Second, you weaponize silence. Most cannot tolerate quiet. They rush to explain, to justify, to overexpose. You don't fill silence, you let it work for you. You hold eye contact, one beat too long. You wait before responding. You let them feel the discomfort of their own words. Silence becomes pressure. Stillness becomes dominance. Third, you mirror emotion before redirecting it. Anger met with calm often fuels fire, but anger met with equal intensity, that disarms. Insecurity reflected back softens guards. Pride met with humility becomes leverage. You adopt their state temporarily, then redirect it where you need it. You don't push. You guide them into their own trap, all while they believe it was their decision. Fourth, you conceal your motives. You never declare your strategy. You let people misunderstand, underestimate, misjudge. And when results land in your favor, you reveal just enough of the truth to haunt them. The realization that they aided their own defeat under your guidance is a wound they never forget. Fifth, you never act emotionally with power. Anger-driven punishment is weakness. Revenge for ego is amateur. You act with clean calculation. If someone must be removed, it's surgical, quiet, irreversible. No spectacle, no trace. If betrayal arrives, you don't react in fury. You collect, you wait, you strike when it reshapes the field. That's not revenge, that's correction. It feels like inevitability, not vengeance. And finally, you hide your depth. Never reveal the full map of your mind. Show fragments. Enough to be respected, never enough to be understood. Because what people think they know about you is what makes them careless. False confidence in their reading of you is the shield you exploit. This is shadow intelligence in practice. A dangerous elegance, a way of moving through the world invisible, inevitable, undeniable. By the time others sense the depth, they're already within it. That is what it means to become untouchable. That is what it means to stop chasing and instead let everything drift into your orbit. This isn't brilliance. This isn't charm. This isn't luck. This is quiet, relentless, dark intelligence. The perfect moment to act is never when people expect it. The most cunning decision is not to prove you are clever, but to allow others to believe they are outsmarting you. You let them feel victorious, while unknowingly stepping into the very snare you constructed with their own cooperation. True dominance doesn't require a crown, applause, or official recognition. You don't need a position to command. The essence of shadow intelligence is subtle mastery. the ability to move people, reshape outcomes, and alter environments while remaining invisible as the cause. This is what Machiavelli admired when he elevated the cunning fox over the roaring lion. The roar is obvious, the bite is noisy. But the fox succeeds not by noise, but by precision, by knowing where to step, when to strike, and how to escape unseen. By the time you reach this state, your mind is no longer just sharp, it is armed. It's no longer simply intelligent, it's tactical. Others won't realize this until the trap closes, until their options vanish. Because the most dangerous ground isn't the battlefield, nor politics, nor business. It's human connection, it's relationships. That's where the clever are undone, where rational people surrender reason for emotion, where individuals beg, explain, and sacrifice power in exchange for love, loyalty, or validation. But with dark intelligence, relationships cease to be cages. They become arenas. Every bond is a structure, every interaction a contest, every word a negotiation. Suddenly, everything looks different. Compliments can disguise bribery. Silence carries signals. Every conversation is either giving away ground or gaining it. Most people expose themselves too early. They spill their insecurities disguised as jokes, their past disguised as confessions, their fears disguised as trust, all because they desperately want to be accepted. They confuse vulnerability with closeness and fail to see how much they're handing over. You, however, do not rush. You withhold. You allow them to speak first, to weave their own rope, never realizing you're the one passing it to them. You reveal little of yourself. You don't share your history. You don't justify your boundaries. You don't correct their false assumptions, because secrecy is safety. The less others know, the less they can exploit. Meanwhile, you gather everything, every tremor in their voice, every flicker in their eyes, every mask they try to wear. You read the insecurity hidden beneath arrogance, the hunger behind generosity, the resentment masked as charm. You carry all this quietly, letting them hand you the keys to their mind. And when people attempt to test you, you don't resist, you withdraw. In your world, disrespect isn't confronted, it's disqualified. Your refusal to react becomes more intimidating than an outburst ever could. They expect arguments, they expect explanations. Instead, they're met with silence, with absence. And absence burns deeper than anger. It leaves them unsettled, replaying everything, questioning themselves. Your distance makes you rare. Your quietness makes you untouchable. Slowly, people shift their behavior around you, not because you demanded it, but because your very presence demands adjustment. They sense your boundaries without needing them explained. They feel your difference in how you carry yourself. You are not desperate to be liked, not rushing to fix, not accessible in the way others are. That very scarcity becomes a source of control. It is not control through fear, not control through affection. It is the quiet authority of someone who cannot be manipulated. They learn that flattery won't buy closeness, that loyalty without depth means little, that your time and attention are privileges, not entitlements. You don't punish with outbursts, you punish with removal. And nothing unsettles a manipulator more than the silence of someone they cannot sway. Dark intelligence doesn't strip you of emotion, it sharpens it. It doesn't make you heartless, it makes you deliberate. You don't form connections by accident, you choose carefully, and even then, you reveal only fragments. Ordinary people chase validation, you chase clarity. They offer affection out of fear of solitude. You offer silence to expose their dependency. They demand explanations, you give none, and that stillness is terrifying, because it signals you've seen through them and quietly decided they aren't worth the energy of response. By now, apologies mean nothing. You no longer argue your worth. You don't repeat yourself for the inattentive. You don't plead to be understood. You simply remove yourself when the foundation cracks, and the ones left behind are forced to face the emptiness you created. That void gnaws at them more than any argument could. Your silence is the verdict, your absence the sentence. That is how you hold power in relationships, not by bending others, but by mastering your own thresholds. What emerges from this process is a self no longer bound by need. You don't require recognition. You don't crave constant affection. You don't cling to understanding. Instead, you cultivate presence, and presence becomes ungovernable. People begin to sense something different about you. They can't name it, but they know they cannot treat you the way they treat others. You carry a tension that warns. This person cannot be played with. Something deep has shifted. You no longer react as before. You don't over-explain. You don't fight for scraps of respect. You don't pour energy into proving points. You've grown quiet, but not weak. Still, but not passive. Reserved, yet infinitely more dangerous. That is the refinement of dark intelligence. It transforms you into a weapon that doesn't need to be shown. You can walk into a room and command attention without speaking. Not through charm, not through performance, but through unpredictability. You have become unreadable. You don't seek to dominate, because the game itself no longer interests you. You've stepped above it. Being underestimated has become your favorite disguise. You wear masks when needed, leave trails when convenient, but never reveal the full blueprint. Influence leaves no fingerprints when wielded correctly. That's your strength, invisibility with impact. This is the final stage, not the loud strategist, not the obvious genius, but the quiet ghost in the framework, moving pieces while others still beg to understand the rules. You don't chase revenge, you erase people from your orbit. You don't argue, you decide outcomes. Real power isn't announced, it's felt. And you've become the kind of presence that doesn't need to be visible to be feared. You don't chase, you draw. You don't react, you design. You don't fracture, you watch others collapse under the gravity of your silence. At this level, you're no longer playing within the system, you are rewriting it. Your mind predicts patterns before they form. Your emotions serve you instead of enslaving you. This isn't about being superior to others, it's about being smarter than the very structure they rely on. Machiavelli said men are driven by love or fear. But shadow intelligence offers a third path: command without affection, authority without intimidation. They don't need to admire you. They don't need to tremble before you. All they need to know is that you are always there, watching, listening, calculating. If you've followed this path, you've already crossed the threshold. You're no longer curious, you're ready. Ready to stop being predictable. Ready to stop being played. Ready to become quietly, dangerously intelligent. This is your next move.